The massive space cruiser Harmony's Edge floated silently in the dark void between star systems. Inside its luxurious halls, the most important diplomatic meeting in human history was about to begin. Captain Elena Torres stood at the viewing window of her quarters, watching distant stars twinkle like diamonds against black velvet. "Captain, they're ready for us," said Lieutenant Jack Morrison, her second in command. He adjusted his formal dress uniform one last time before adding, "The Caliph delegation is already in the main hall." Elena nodded and turned away from the window. She had spent months preparing for this moment. The Caliph Empire controlled the richest mining systems in this part of the galaxy. Humanity needed those rare minerals desperately to build better ships and expand their colonies. Without this trade agreement, human expansion would slow to a crawl. "How do I look?" Elena asked, smoothing down her blue diplomatic uniform. "Like someone who can get us those mining rights," Jack replied with a grin. They walked through the ship's corridors toward the main dining hall. The Harmony's Edge was a neutral vessel, owned by the Galactic Trade Commission. It was designed to host meetings between different species, with adjustable atmosphere controls and dining areas that could accommodate various alien biologies. Dr. Marcus Webb joined them at the entrance to the hall. He was the team science officer and xenobiology expert. His job was to make sure the humans didn't accidentally offend their hosts by breaking some unknown cultural rule. "Remember," Marcus said quietly, "the Caliph are very formal. They see sharing food and drink as the highest form of respect. Whatever they offer us, we should accept it graciously." Elena pushed open the heavy doors, and they entered the grand dining hall. The room was impressive, with a domed ceiling that showed a holographic display of swirling galaxies. Long tables were arranged in a circle, with the Caliph delegation already seated at the far end. The Caliph were an ancient species, much older than humanity. They stood about 7 feet tall, with scaled skin that shifted between deep green and bronze colors. Their eyes were large and golden, and they moved with a grace that suggested both intelligence and danger. Most wore flowing robes decorated with intricate patterns that seemed to shift and change as they moved. At the head of the Caliph table sat Ambassador Vex, the most powerful diplomat in their empire. His scales were darker than the others, nearly black, and his golden eyes seemed to take in everything at once. When he saw the humans enter, he rose from his seat with fluid motion. "Welcome, honored guests from Earth," Vex said, his voice carrying a slight hiss that was characteristic of his species. "We are pleased to host you aboard this vessel for these important discussions." Elena stepped forward and bowed slightly, the way Marcus had taught her. "Ambassador Vex, we are honored by your invitation. Humanity looks forward to building a strong relationship with the Caliph Empire. Please be seated." Vex gestured to the chairs arranged opposite his delegation. "We have prepared a feast in your honor, featuring the finest foods from many worlds." The humans took their seats, and Elena found herself directly across from Vex. The table between them was already laden with strange and exotic dishes. There were fruits that glowed with soft light, vegetables in colors that didn't exist on Earth, and what appeared to be various types of meat, though Elena couldn't identify the sources. "Before we begin our formal negotiations," Vex announced, "it is our custom to share the finest offerings of our respective worlds. Food and drink unite all intelligent beings, regardless of their origin." Several Caliph servants entered the hall, carrying ornate bottles and crystal glasses. Elena noticed that the bottles were made of some kind of dark material that seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it. The liquid inside was deep red, almost purple, and seemed to swirl with its own internal movement. "This," Vex said, with obvious pride, "is our most precious vintage. It is made from the fruit of trees that grow only on our homeworld, in soil enriched by the minerals of our deepest caves. The process takes many years, and the result is considered the finest beverage in the known galaxy." Dr. Webb leaned forward. With interest. It's beautiful, he said. The color is unlike anything I've seen. Indeed, Vex replied, his golden eyes gleaming. This vintage is so rare and valuable that we share it only with our most honored guests. To drink this wine is to be welcomed into the inner circle of Caliph society. Elena felt a surge of excitement. If the Caliph were already treating them as honored guests, it was a good sign for the negotiations ahead. She watched as the servants carefully poured the wine into crystal glasses, filling each one precisely to the same level. Other members of both delegations watched the ceremony with interest. There were representatives from several other species present as observers, including the tall blue-skinned Altarians and the insect-like Zenith. Elena noticed that they seemed particularly focused on the wine ceremony, whispering among themselves. In our culture, Vex continued, the sharing of wine represents trust, friendship, and mutual respect. When we drink together, we are saying that we trust each other with our lives. The irony of those words would become clear much later. Jack Morrison, sitting next to Elena, whispered, "This is going better than we hoped. They're really rolling out the red carpet for us." Marcus nodded in agreement. The fact that they're sharing their finest wine is a very positive sign. It suggests they're serious about building a long-term relationship. Each human delegation member now had a glass of the mysterious wine before them. Elena lifted hers and examined it more closely. The liquid seemed to have depth to it, as if she were looking into a pool rather than just a glass of wine. There was a faint, sweet aroma that reminded her of flowers, but with an underlying scent she couldn't identify. "Before we drink," Vex said, rising from his chair, "I propose a toast. To new friendships, profitable partnerships, and the prosperity of both our peoples." The other Caliph representatives rose as well, lifting their glasses. Elena and her team followed suit, standing and raising their wine glasses high. "To friendship and prosperity," Elena replied, her voice carrying across the hall. The moment was perfect. The lighting in the hall seemed to dim slightly, focusing attention on the two groups of diplomats facing each other across the table. Focusing attention on the two groups of diplomats facing each other across the table. Holographic ceiling showed a particularly beautiful spiral galaxy, its arms reaching out like an embrace. What none of the humans realized was that they were about to participate in what the Caliph believed would be their final toast. The wine in their glasses contained enough toxins to kill a dozen members of most galactic species. It was meant to be a swift and elegant execution, leaving the Caliph free to claim the human ships and technology waiting in orbit. But the Caliph had made one crucial error in their planning. They had assumed that humans were like every other species they had encountered, fragile, vulnerable, and easily eliminated by the sophisticated poisons of their homeworld. They were about to learn just how wrong that assumption was. The moment had arrived. Ambassador Vex held his glass high, his golden eyes fixed on Captain Elena Torres and her team. Around the Great Hall, representatives from various alien species watched with curiosity and anticipation. The crystal glasses caught the light from the holographic ceiling, making the dark wine shimmer like liquid starlight. "To friendship and prosperity," Elena repeated, her voice strong and confident. The glasses came together in the ceremonial toast, crystal touching. Crystal with a soft musical chime that echoed through the hall. Then, without hesitation, Elena brought the wine to her lips and took a long, deep drink. Vex watched her intently, his scaled features betraying nothing. Inside, he was counting the seconds. According to every test his scientists had conducted, the toxins in that wine should begin working within 30 seconds. First would come the paralysis, starting from the extremities and working inward. Then the nervous system would shut down, followed by complete organ failure. It was considered a merciful death by Caliph standards, quick and relatively painless. Doctor Marcus Webb followed Elena's lead, taking a generous sip of the wine. His eyebrows rose slightly in surprise. "Interesting flavor," he said, swirling the wine in his glass. "It has a very unique taste profile. Sweet at first, but then there's this bitter aftertaste, almost metallic." Lieutenant Jack Morrison nodded in agreement, already reaching for a second sip. "It's strong, but not unpleasant. Reminds me of that blackberry wine my grandmother used to make back on New Texas." 30 seconds passed, then 45. The humans continued to drink and discuss the wine's flavor as if nothing was happening. Vex felt a cold sensation spreading through his chest that had nothing to do with the wine. At a nearby table, one of the Altarian observers had accidentally spilled a few drops of the wine onto his hand while gesturing. Within moments, his blue skin began to turn pale, and he started gasping for air. His companion quickly called for medical assistance as the Altarian collapsed, his body convulsing. "Oh no," Elena said, immediately standing up. "Is he all right? Do you need our medical kit?" Dr. Webb was already moving toward the fallen alien, his medical training taking over. As he knelt beside the Altarian, he noticed the few drops of wine still glistening on the alien's hand. "This is definitely some kind of toxic reaction," he said to Elena. "But I'm not sure why. We're drinking the same wine and feeling fine." Vex watched this scene with growing alarm. The wine was working exactly as it should on the Altarian. The toxins were doing their job perfectly. So why were the humans still standing, talking, and even trying to help the victim? Another minute passed. Elena finished her first glass and looked around the table. "This really is excellent wine, Ambassador Vex. I hope you don't mind me asking, but would it be possible to get the recipe? Our agricultural specialists might be interested in trying to cultivate something similar on one of our colony worlds." The recipe? Vex stammered, his usual composure cracking. "Oh, I understand if it's a trade secret," Elena said quickly. "I didn't mean to pry. It's just that we humans have a real appreciation for unique beverages. We've been making fermented drinks for thousands of years on Earth." Jack Morrison laughed and raised his glass again. "That's putting it mildly, Captain. Remember that celebration on Europa Station? Some of the miners brought that homemade stuff that was nearly pure alcohol. This Caliph wine is smooth compared to that." Dr. Webb returned to the table after ensuring the Altarian was stable. "The medics are taking care of him," he reported. "Looks like he had an allergic reaction to something. Poor fellow." He picked up his wine glass again and took another sip. "You know, Captain, this reminds me of that mushroom wine they make in the Australian colonies. Same kind of earthy undertone." "Mushroom wine?" asked one of the younger Caliph diplomats, unable to hide his confusion. "Oh yes," Webb said enthusiastically. "Humans have been fermenting all sorts of things for millennia. Grapes, grains, fruits, even mushrooms and cacti. Some of the stuff people drink on the frontier worlds would probably be classified as industrial solvent by most species standards." Vex was now staring openly at the humans, his golden eyes wide with disbelief. According to his calculations, each human had consumed enough toxins to kill a small army of most galactic species. Yet they were not only alive but seemed to be enjoying themselves more with each passing minute. Elena noticed the ambassador's stare and smiled warmly. "I hope we're not being too informal, Ambassador. I know different species have different customs around dining and drinking." "Not at all," Vex managed to say, though his voice sounded strained. "I am simply impressed by your appreciation for our wine." "Well, we humans do love our drinks," Jack said with a grin. "Back on Earth, there's an old saying, what doesn't kill you makes you stronger. I guess we've applied that philosophy to our beverages too." Another Caliph diplomat leaned over to whisper something urgently in Vex's ear. The ambassador's scales seemed to darken even further as he listened. He was being told that the wine concentration was triple-checked before the meeting. "There should Be enough poison in those glasses to kill everyone in the room. Dr. Webb, meanwhile, was examining his wine glass with scientific curiosity. Ambassador, if you don't mind me asking, what gives this wine its distinctive properties? The chemical composition seems quite complex. Vex felt trapped. He couldn't very well explain that the distinctive properties were a carefully crafted blend of neurotoxins, paralytic agents, and cellular disruptors. It comes from the unique soil of our homeworld, he said weakly. Ah, terroir, Elena nodded. Knowingly, that makes sense. On Earth, we have wines that taste completely different based on where the grapes are grown. Some of our wine regions have soil that's been enriched by volcanic activity over thousands of years. I imagine your homeworld has some unique geological features too. Very unique, Vex said grimly. The evening continued with the humans completely unaware of the assassination attempt happening around them. They chatted about Earth's various alcoholic beverages, comparing them to the Caliph wine. Elena mentioned the rice wines of Asia. Jack talked about the whiskies of Scotland and Ireland, and Dr. Webb launched into a detailed explanation of how fermentation worked on worlds with different atmospheric compositions. With each casual mention of consuming substances that would be considered toxic waste by galactic standards, the Caliph delegation grew more and more horrified. These humans weren't just surviving the poison, they were describing a lifestyle built around consuming dangerous substances for pleasure. You know, Elena said, reaching for the wine bottle to refill her glass, this has been such a wonderful start to our negotiations. The wine really does set a perfect tone for building trust between our peoples. Vex watched in fascination and terror as she poured herself another full glass of what should have been certain death. The irony was not lost on him that Elena was talking about trust while unknowingly drinking poison, and that her survival was somehow proving her trustworthiness in ways he had never intended. As the formal dinner portion of the evening continued, it became clear to every Caliph present that they had made a fundamental miscalculation about human biology. These weren't the fragile, easily eliminated aliens they had expected. These were something else entirely, something that could drink deadly poison and ask for the recipe. 2 hours had passed since the fatal toast, and Ambassador Vex was experiencing something he had never felt before in his long diplomatic career: complete and utter confusion mixed with growing dread. The humans were not only still alive, they were becoming more animated and friendly with each passing minute. Captain Elena Torres was now on her third glass of the poisoned wine, laughing at a story Lieutenant Morrison was telling about a drinking contest on Mars colony. Dr. Webb had pulled out his portable scanner and was discreetly running tests on his wine glass, muttering things like fascinating molecular structure and unprecedented organic compounds. Ambassador Vex, Elena said, turning to face the increasingly pale Caliph leader, you look a bit unwell. Are you feeling all right? The artificial gravity on these neutral ships can sometimes cause discomfort for different species. Vex stared at her with his golden eyes, trying to process what he was seeing. This human female had consumed enough neurotoxins to kill a herd of Bronthan elephants, yet she was concerned about his comfort. I am quite well, thank you, he managed to say. Are you sure? Elena pressed, genuine concern in her voice. You look a little green around the gills. Well, greener than usual, I mean. No offense intended. None taken, Vex replied weakly. He was indeed feeling sick, but not from any physical ailment. The sickness came from the slow realization that his carefully planned assassination had not just failed. It had failed so completely that the targets were now worried about his health. Dr. Webb looked up from his scanner with an expression of scientific delight. Captain, you need to see this, he said, his voice filled with excitement. The chemical composition of this wine is absolutely incredible. Elena moved closer to look at Webb's scanner display. What did you find, Marcus? Well, Webb said, Adjusting his scanner settings, this wine contains at least 12 different alkaloid compounds that I've never seen before. Some of them are similar to chemicals found in certain earth plants, but much more concentrated. Lieutenant Morrison joined them, still holding his wine glass. Is that good or bad, Doc? It's fascinating, Webb replied. For example, this compound. Here is almost identical to the alkaloids found in deadly nightshade, but it's about 50 times stronger. And this one resembles the toxins in certain Australian spiders, but again, much more potent. Vex felt his blood turn cold. Webb was describing the exact toxins that Caliph scientists had spent decades perfecting. Toxins that should have killed the humans within minutes of consumption. Deadly nightshade? Alina asked with interest. My grandmother used to grow that in her garden back on Earth. She said it kept the rabbits away. Your grandmother grew deadly nightshade? Asked one of the younger Caliph diplomats, his voice cracking slightly. Oh yes, Elena said casually. She had quite an exotic garden. Deadly nightshade, foxglove, castor beans, oleander. Beautiful flowers, most of them. Of course, we kids weren't allowed to touch them, but grandmother used to make teas from some of the less dangerous ones when we had stomach troubles. Jack Morrison nodded in agreement. My family had a similar setup. My uncle was a botanist who specialized in toxic plants. He always said that the difference between medicine and poison was just the dosage. Dr. Webb continued his analysis, completely absorbed in the scientific puzzle. Captain, look at this reading. This wine also contains compounds similar to those found in pufferfish, blue-ringed octopus venom, and even some snake venoms. It's like someone took all the most dangerous biological toxins in the galaxy and concentrated them into a single beverage. Really? Elena said, taking another sip. That's impressive. The Caliphs certainly know their chemistry. This must take incredible skill to produce. Vex watched in horror as the human captain complimented his species' most lethal creation while drinking it like it was fruit juice. Around the table, other Caliph diplomats were having similar reactions of disbelief and growing terror. Dr. Webb, said the Caliph science officer, a female named Zira, whose scales had turned almost white with shock. Are you saying that your species is familiar with these types of compounds? Oh, absolutely, Webb replied cheerfully. Humans have been dealing with natural toxins for our entire evolutionary history. Earth is full of poisonous plants, venomous animals, and toxic environments. We've learned to live with them, even use them. Use them? Zira asked weakly. Sure, Jack said, finishing his second glass. We use controlled amounts of various toxins in our medicines. Small doses of many poisons can actually be beneficial. We call it building immunity. Elena nodded in agreement. It's true. On Earth, we have a saying, what doesn't kill you makes you stronger. Our ancestors survived by learning to deal with hostile environments and dangerous substances. Vex tried to maintain his diplomatic composure, but inside he was panicking. The humans were describing exactly the kind of biological adaptations that would make them immune to Caliph toxins. They were talking about their homeworld as if it were some kind of nightmare death planet where everything was trying to kill them. Captain Torres, Vex said carefully. Your homeworld sounds quite challenging. Earth? Elena laughed. I suppose it can be. We have deserts where the temperature reaches over 50 degrees Celsius, frozen wastelands where it drops to -40, jungles filled with creatures that can kill you in dozens of different ways, and oceans with predators the size of buildings. Not to mention the weather, Jack added. Hurricanes, tornadoes, earthquakes, volcanic eruptions. Sometimes I think Earth is actively trying to kill everything that lives on it. Dr. Webb looked up from his scanner again. That's probably why we've developed such strong immune systems and toxin resistance. Our ancestors had to survive everything the planet could throw at them. Those who couldn't adapt to the hostile environment didn't pass on their genes. Hostile environment? Zero whispered. Oh yes, Webb said matter-of-factly. Earth is what xenobiologists classify as a Class 12 death world. Extremely high gravity, volatile weather systems, aggressive predator species, and naturally occurring toxins in the ecosystem. Most galactic species would consider it uninhabitable. The silence that followed this statement was deafening. Every Khalith in the room was staring at the humans with a mixture of awe and terror. They had just learned that they had tried to poison beings from a world so dangerous that it was classified as uninhabitable by galactic standards. Elena noticed the shocked expressions around the table. I hope we haven't said anything to offend you, she said politely. I know different species come from very different types of worlds. We don't mean to make Earth sound more dangerous than it is. More dangerous? Vex managed to croak. Well, humans tend to exaggerate sometimes, Elena said with a smile. Earth isn't really that bad once you know how to handle it. Most of the dangerous stuff won't kill you if you're careful and know what you're doing. Jack raised his empty glass toward the wine bottle. Speaking of knowing what you're doing, could I trouble you for another glass of this excellent wine, Ambassador? It really is some of the finest I've ever tasted. As Vex watched Jack pour himself another glass of concentrated death and drink it with obvious pleasure, he realized that his species had made the most catastrophic mistake in their diplomatic history. They hadn't just failed to kill the humans. They had accidentally proven that humans were the most terrifyingly resilient species they had ever encountered. The dinner conversation had taken an unexpected turn, and Ambassador Vex found himself learning more about humanity than any intelligence report had ever provided. What started as a simple assassination disguised as diplomacy had become a terrifying education about the species he had tried to eliminate. You know, Captain Elena Torres said, swirling the poisoned wine in her glass, this reminds me of the tea my grandmother used to make when I was sick as a child. Dr. Webb looked up with interest. Really? What kind of tea? She called it her special remedy, Elena replied with a nostalgic smile. She would pick leaves from various plants in her garden and brew them together. It tasted awful, but it always made me feel better. Looking back, I realized she was probably using controlled amounts of natural toxins to boost my immune system. Lieutenant Morrison nodded knowingly. My family did something similar. We lived near the Amazon basin on Earth, and the local tribes taught us about medicinal plants. Some of the strongest medicines came from the most dangerous plants. The shaman said that poison and medicine were just different faces of the same coin. Vex listened to this casual discussion of consuming deadly toxins as medicine with growing horror. These humans were describing practices that would be considered biological warfare by most galactic species. The Amazon basin, repeated Zira, the Calith science officer. Is that another dangerous region of your world? Oh, extremely dangerous, Elena said cheerfully. The biodiversity there is incredible, but almost everything is trying to kill you in some way. Poisonous frogs, venomous snakes, plants that can blind you with their sap, insects that carry dozens of different diseases. And yet humans choose to live there. Asked another Caliph diplomat, his scales now completely pale. Absolutely, Jack said. Some of our best medicines come from those dangerous regions. Humans have this tendency to move into the most hostile environments we can find and figure out how to not just survive, but thrive. Dr. Webb set down his scanner and joined the conversation. More fully, it's true. Throughout human history, we've colonized Arctic wastelands, scorching deserts, volcanic islands, and even the depths of our oceans. Each environment taught us new ways to survive. Your oceans? Vex asked, though he was beginning to dread the answer. Oh yes, Elena said excitedly. Earth's oceans are incredible. We have creatures down there that could swallow this entire ship. Giant squids with tentacles longer than most starships, sharks that have remained unchanged for millions of years because they're already perfect predators. Perfect predators, Zero whispered, her voice barely audible. And the pressure, Webb added. At the deepest parts of our oceans, the water pressure would crush most materials instantly. Yet humans developed technology to go down there and study it. We even found life forms that exist in conditions that should be impossible. Jack laughed. At a memory. Remember that documentary about the deep-sea exploration, Captain? They found fish that were basically living acid factories and jellyfish that could kill you just by touching them. The box jellyfish, Alina nodded. One of the most venomous creatures on Earth. A single touch can kill an adult human in minutes. Yet we studied them, learned from them, and even developed antidotes. Vex was beginning to understand the true scope of his miscalculation. The wine that was supposed to kill these humans contained toxins that would be considered mild compared to what they dealt with on their homeworld every day. Captain Torres, Vex said carefully, when you say that your world has creatures that could kill humans in minutes, how do your people survive? Adaptation, Alina replied simply. Over thousands of generations, humans developed incredible immune systems and toxin resistance. Plus, we're really good at learning from dangerous situations. Learning how? Asked Zira. Trial and error, mostly, Jack said with a grin. If something didn't kill you, you figured out how to use it. If it did kill you, well, your family learned from your mistake. Dr. Webb nodded seriously. It's actually quite fascinating from a biological perspective. Humans develop resistance to toxins through controlled exposure. We call it building immunity. What doesn't kill us literally does make us stronger. Give us an example, Vex said, though he wasn't sure he wanted to hear the answer. Well, Alina said thoughtfully, there's a plant on Earth called poison ivy. Most humans develop a painful rash when they touch it. But people who work with it regularly often become immune to its effects. Or alcohol, Jack added. Pure alcohol is technically a poison, but humans have been drinking it for thousands of years. Our bodies learn to process it, though too much will still kill you, he added with a laugh. Speaking of alcohol, Webb said, some human cultures deliberately consume fermented beverages that would be considered industrial solvents by other species. There's a drink from one of our moon colonies that's nearly pure ethanol with added minerals, and people drink this voluntarily? Zira asked. In horror. Oh yes, Alina said. It's considered a delicacy, very expensive. I tried it once at a military ceremony. It was like drinking liquid fire, but it had this amazing flavor underneath the burn. Vex realized that his species' most powerful biological weapon was being compared to expensive human liquor. The irony was almost too much to bear. There's also the matter of our children, Webb continued, seemingly unaware of the effect his words were having on the Caliph delegation. Human children are naturally curious and tend to put everything in their mouths. This means they're exposed to various toxins and allergens from a very young age. Your children consume toxins? Another Caliph diplomat asked weakly. Not intentionally, Elena clarified. But Earth has so many naturally poisonous substances that exposure is inevitable. Children who survive to adulthood have usually developed resistance to most common toxins. It's actually a survival trait, Webb explained. Children who couldn't adapt to their toxic environment didn't survive to pass on their genes. Over thousands of generations, this created a species with remarkable toxin resistance. Jack raised his glass again. Here's to human evolution, he said, teaching us to drink poison and call it wine. The other humans laughed and raised their glasses as well, completely missing the horrified expressions on every Caliph face in the room. They were toasting their ability to consume deadly toxins while sitting across from the very beings who had tried to poison them. You know, Alina said after taking another sip, this wine really is exceptional. The complexity of flavors is unlike anything I've experienced. You can tell that centuries of knowledge went into perfecting this recipe. Vex wanted to laugh at the bitter irony, but he was too terrified. The humans were complimenting the sophistication. of the very weapon designed to kill them, while treating it as an interesting beverage to be savored and analyzed. As the evening continued, the Caliph delegation came to a stunning realization. They hadn't just failed to kill the humans. They had accidentally demonstrated that humans were the most dangerous species they had ever encountered, capable of consuming their most lethal creations and asking for seconds. The humans, meanwhile, continued to chat happily about their toxic homeworld, completely unaware that they were describing what sounded like a nightmare death planet to every other species in the galaxy. Ambassador Vex sat in stunned silence as the full weight of the evening's revelations settled over him. His carefully planned assassination had not only failed spectacularly, but had revealed that humans were perhaps the most dangerous species in the known galaxy. The irony was not lost on him that his attempt to eliminate them had instead proven their value as potential allies. Captain Alana Torres, now on her fourth glass of what should have been certain death, was examining the bottle with genuine appreciation. Ambassador Vex, I have to ask you something, and please don't take this the wrong way. Vex tensed, wondering if the humans had finally figured out what had really happened tonight. Of course, Captain. What would you like to know? This wine, Elena said, gesturing with her glass. The complexity of its chemical composition is extraordinary. Dr. Webb's analysis shows it contains some of the most sophisticated biological compounds he's ever encountered. This isn't just fermentation, is it? This is advanced biochemistry. Dr. Webb nodded enthusiastically. Captain's right, Ambassador. The precision required to create something like this suggests incredibly advanced knowledge of toxicology and organic chemistry. This is the work of master scientists, not just winemakers. Lieutenant Morrison leaned forward with interest. Are you saying the Caliph are experts in chemical warfare as well as winemaking? The question hung in the air like a loaded weapon. Every Caliph in the room held their breath, waiting to see how their ambassador would respond to such a direct inquiry. Vex realized he was at a crossroads. He could continue the charade and deny everything, or he could acknowledge the truth and see where it led. Looking at the humans who had casually consumed enough poison to kill armies, he made a decision that would change the course of galactic history. You are very perceptive, Vex said slowly. Yes, the Caliph have extensive knowledge of biochemistry and toxicology. It is one of our species' greatest scientific achievements. That's incredible, Elena said, her eyes lighting up with excitement. The applications for medical research alone must be enormous. If you can create compounds this complex and precise, you must have incredible capabilities in developing medicines and treatments. Dr. Webb was practically vibrating with scientific enthusiasm. Ambassador, with your permission, I'd love to study your biochemical techniques. The potential for cross-species medical advancement could be revolutionary. Vex stared at them in amazement. Instead of being horrified by the implied admission that his species were master poisoners, the humans were excited about the potential benefits. They were looking at his people's deadliest weapons and seeing opportunities for healing. There's something else, Elena said, her tone becoming more serious. Ambassador, I'm going to be completely honest with you. The level of sophistication in this wine suggests that your people are capable of much more than simple trade partnerships. What do you mean? Vex asked, though he suspected he knew where this was going. I mean that any species capable of creating something this complex could also create incredibly effective weapons, Elena said bluntly. And the fact that you shared this with us tonight tells me something important about Caliph character. Jack Morrison nodded in agreement. It shows trust, but also confidence. You wouldn't share your most advanced capabilities unless you were either very sure of our friendship or very sure you could handle any consequences. Vex felt a cold chill run down his spine. The humans were dancing around the truth with uncomfortable accuracy. Elena stood up and walked around the table to face Vex directly. Ambassador, I'm going to make you an offer that I wasn't planning to make tonight. After seeing what your people are capable of, I think we should be discussing more than just mining rights. What kind of offer? Vex asked carefully. A military alliance, Elena said without hesitation. Humanity needs partners who can match our capabilities, not just in combat, but in thinking strategically. Tonight has shown me that the Caliph are exactly the kind of allies we should have. The room fell silent. Even the other human delegation members looked surprised at their captain's bold proposal. A military alliance? Zero whispered. Think about it, Elena continued, her voice gaining strength as she warmed to the idea. Humans bring resilience, adaptability, and the ability to survive in impossible conditions. The Caliph brings scientific sophistication, strategic thinking, and clearly impressive biochemical capabilities. Together, we'd be formidable. Dr. Webb jumped in with enthusiasm. The research possibilities alone would be incredible. Combining human toxin resistance with Khalid, biochemical knowledge could lead to medical breakthroughs that would benefit the entire galaxy. Jack Morrison was nodding thoughtfully. And from a tactical standpoint, it makes sense. Any enemy facing an alliance between Deathworlders and master chemists would have to think twice before starting trouble. Vex looked around at his own delegation, seeing the same thought in every pair of golden eyes. The humans were right. The combination of human resilience and Caliph scientific prowess would create an alliance unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. Captain Torres, Vex said slowly, your proposal is unexpected, but perhaps not unwelcome. However, I must ask, are you certain your people would want to ally with a species known for our ... expertise in dangerous substances? Elena laughed, a sound filled with genuine amusement. Ambassador, we're humans. We come from a world where everything is trying to kill us, and we consider that normal. Having allies who understand dangerous substances isn't a problem for us, it's an advantage. Plus, Jack added with a grin, anyone who can make poison this sophisticated and still have it taste good clearly knows what they're doing. I respect that kind of skill. Dr. Webb was already pulling up data on his scanner. The potential for joint research projects is enormous. We could develop new medical treatments, create better protective equipment for hazardous environments, maybe even find ways to help other species adapt to more challenging worlds. Vex realized that his failed assassination attempt had accidentally created the perfect negotiating position. The humans respected the Caliph's capabilities without fearing them, and they saw opportunities where other species would see only threats. There is one thing I must confess, Vex said, making another crucial decision. This wine. It was not originally intended as a gesture of friendship. Elena raised an eyebrow. Oh? It contains enough toxins to kill most galactic species within minutes. It was meant to be ... a test of sorts. The humans exchanged glances, and then Elena began to laugh. You mean you were testing whether we could handle your biochemical capabilities? That's brilliant. You wanted to see if we were tough enough to be worth allying with. Vex blinked in surprise. That is one way to interpret it. I like it, Jack said, raising his glass. A trial by poison. Very direct, very efficient. If we couldn't handle your wine, we probably couldn't handle being your allies. Dr. Webb was grinning widely. It's actually a perfect screening method. Any species that could form a meaningful partnership with the Caliph would need to be able to handle your biochemical expertise. Elena extended her hand toward Vex in the human gesture of agreement. Ambassador, I think this evening has shown that our species are perfectly suited for alliance. Your people bring scientific sophistication and strategic thinking. Our people bring resilience and adaptability. Together, we'd be unstoppable. As Vex reached out to shake Elena's hand, he reflected on the strangest diplomatic evening of his career. He had tried to poison the humans and failed. They had drunk his deadliest creation and complimented the flavor. And now they were proposing exactly the kind of alliance he had hoped to achieve through completely different means. To an unexpected partnership, Vex said, raising his own glass of the wine that had started this whole extraordinary evening. To friendship forged in poison, Elena replied with a smile, clinking her glass against his dot as both delegations raised their glasses in a toast to their new alliance. Vex realized that sometimes the best plans were the ones that failed completely and led to something even better than originally intended.